And it kind of like goes neatly together with what Charlie just said, because she focused on the user centricity, basically. So customers' needs and what customers want. And I'm very pleased to have Jan Wittrodt now with me. He's head of privacy and technology law at Zalando. And Jan, you agreed to talk about how we can solve customers' problems today again with the data privacy framework, and of course by developing new solutions for old and new problems. So the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. So allow me first to share my screen. Here we are. So I hope you can see that.
I think it will soon come up. I'm admiring the room you're sitting in. Looks quite cool.
Thank you. It's actually something that we're trying for the first time now. Why is it not working? We were actually testing this before. That's interesting. Give me a moment here. There, it should come up, hopefully. Can you see that now?
Yeah, perfectly.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Technology, I love it. So, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think we are all one way or the other working with privacy, right? Obviously, because otherwise you wouldn't be joining this session today. And we have this great tool to help us out, which is the GDPR. And we all know that the GDPR is not perfect, but it actually has all the bits and pieces that we need to be successful. And something I really like about the GDPR, that it tries to achieve and offers a tool for balancing and for achieving balance between unlocking the potential of data and of innovation while not exposing us as humans. But how we use it in the real world, I think this is where it gets a bit more tricky. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So lately means probably in the past 2 years. It seems there's a growing gap between the GDPR's grand plan and our everyday actions. And more specifically, there is, at least is my concern, that we have a growing gap between the vision of the GDPR and how we actually implement that and how we execute the GDPR. So allow me to unpack this journey of realization for you a bit and makes this more tangible, hopefully. So it probably started in 2021. This is where, until then, we had built our privacy strategy, had implemented that, and that included obviously building a privacy program, establishing our privacy governance team. And we're actually quite proud of that. And everyone who ever builds this at the company from the within knows it's pretty challenging. It's a work that is never over. And there are a few challenges still ahead, especially in the space of data governance. But I'm confident that we will solve that. And at this point in time, we had also created customer promises together with a business that include trust and respecting privacy. And everyone who works with customer promises at its company knows how powerful that is, because it's actually something from the business for the business to just make sure you focus on the customer. You can bring this to every meeting and you can just ask, how's this supporting our customer promise around respecting privacy? And we even used the learnings from that and created privacy principles. So instead of long policies that would just end up in a drawer or in an inbox, never to be read. Yet there was this underlying discomfort that something was still wrong. And it felt like with every step forward we made in building out our privacy program, we're also making a step backward in truly addressing customer concerns. And it felt like the more we delved into privacy, the more elusive solutions for tangible customer problems actually appeared. And to put this in more simpler words, it felt like we were actually not improving the customer experience. We were making it worse and more complex and more complicated. And that's left us scratching our heads. So, Rebecca, as you said, we are a customer-centric company. So instead of hypothesizing over the customer problems, we actually took a more direct approach. So we launched a customer research project. And our aim was actually straightforward, right? We wanted to understand how customers think about privacy at Zalando, their trust levels. We wanted to understand if customers perceive privacy differently across European markets. We wanted to understand how we compare to other players in the market. And above all, we wanted to understand the expectations and reservations of customers when sharing data with us. And the results we have seen were both expected, but partly also surprising. So let me share a few of the things we learned. So first of all, trust in privacy and data protection at Zalando was roughly between 36% and 44%. This is the customers who would say, I fully trust Zalando with my data. There were another 30%-ish who would say, I generally trust Zalando with my data. So overall, actually quite good results, better than I had expected. But there were a few other results and numbers that were also quite telling and helped to put this overall into perspective. So for example, we also asked customers to name one company that they would fully trust with all the data. And 49% of customers actually did not have an answer to this in the first place. So in other words, half of customers didn't know a company for which that would hold true. And the other half, and they answered, it was scattered across the board. There was no company attracting actually more than 1% at best, with two notable exceptions. One was sectoral, which was banks, and the other was Apple. They both attracted 6%, which might appear small as a total number, but in comparison, it's actually quite big. And I could give a whole presentation around what that means and what you can learn from that around trust, especially institutional trust. We could also see that there were the usual customer concerns around data theft, unauthorized access to data, also concerns around the sale of data, especially in the advertising space. We could also very clearly see that customers were worried about not understanding how the data they share is actually used. And I will show you in a minute why this is so super important that this understanding exists. And we could also see a lot of customers that showed a very clear aversion to engaging with the nitty-gritty details of privacy because it was a challenge to them. But there were actually also a few silver linings. So there was one segment of customers who actually had a very different trust level. These were the customers where you could see that they really understood how the data they shared actually improved their experience. So these were the customers who understood that because we know what sizes they returned and what sizes they kept, that we could tell them, hey, this shoe may be size 43 because 42 might actually not fit you. And these customers, they had a trust level way beyond 70%. And if you look at the initial number that I just showed you, 36, 44 to 70, this is on the other side of the spectrum, actually. So it shows why it is so important that customers truly understand this connection. But these were also the customers who would tell us, hey, I don't have a concern with sharing data with you. The real concern I have is that when you use this data, you please put it to good use and you return this to me. So I also want to benefit from this data. And there are two key elements we can already take away from that. Number one, customers are not so much concerned about sharing data. They're much more concerned about how companies use this data, put this data to good use, and actually return this as a favor, as it were, back to the customers as a benefit. And the second one is you can clearly see how important it is that customers really understand how data is used, because only then they build this realization how this flows and how this is a circle and this is not just unilateral, right? Obviously, what we also saw is a privacy paradox. And I mean, we all know what this is, right? Customers tell us one thing about risks they're concerned about, their actions so show something else entirely. But what was a bit surprising to us is that this actually exists twice. Because customers were also telling us they expect high quality service, great personalization, easy product discovery, but they were not realizing that when they were frustrated because this is not working, this might be because they were not sharing data. So it works actually in both directions. So this was a bit new. And to further understand that, we delve deeper into customer psychographics. And again, there's actually a whole story how we learned about that, because at this point in time, our sustainability colleagues were doing similar work in relation to something called value action gap and sustainability. And I spare you the long story, but what we took away from that, and when we applied this to us, is that we found 4 prevailing customer mindsets. We found engaged customers, skeptical customers, apathic customers, and unaware customers. And engaged customers, as the name suggests, these are at least willing to engage with information and with settings, but they also expect that this is done very well. While skeptical customers, you could put everything in front of them, that would not help them to build trust because they need some kind of external validation. Certification can work for skeptical customers. But what we also saw were apathic customers. And we believe that this is probably the biggest customer group. It probably represents most of customers, most of us actually. And we could clearly see that these customers would tell us, I'm overwhelmed. This is too much. I just want to shop. Everything else, I don't want to engage with settings or with information. This is overwhelming. But these were also the customers who expect that a service works very well and that are very easily frustrated if it doesn't work, if it isn't up to their expectations. So what we could see is that these customer segments with their unique dispositions, they all need tailored solutions. And I think it was at this point in time where it became clear to us and where we saw that there was a glaring issue in our findings, because the current trajectory, which is especially influenced by authority policy, but also by decisions in particular of the European Court of Justice, this puts us into a solution space that heavily focuses on consent and on choice. But what we could see here is that what customers actually need is different. And to make this more explicit, consent doesn't work for any of these customer mindsets, especially for apathic customers. And remember, we believe this represents probably the majority of customers. They already tell us they are overwhelmed and it's too much. And now we're actually suggesting to putting even more in front of them instead of less. So it's a huge challenge for them. It doesn't work for them. But even for engaged customers, they will tell you they need choice and information where it really matters, where it makes a difference, not for every nitty-gritty use case. These were the customers which, in our initial findings, they expressed concern about engaging the nitty-gritty details of privacy because it also doesn't work for them, right? So what we basically learned from that is that the way we built our privacy program, it was actually not solving for customer problems, and it was actually not creating or building trust. It was achieving the opposite. It was eroding trust, and it was driving customers away. So let's maybe look at the consequences this might have. What we could see is there is a increasing gap, a disconnect between what customers expect and how we actually build privacy solutions nowadays, right? And ignoring this widening gap, this could have huge implications for Europe, because customer feedback and their actions clearly show us they want easy solutions that solve their immediate needs. They want powerful personalization. They want easy product discovery. They want convenience. And their allegiance will naturally gravitate towards companies and products that offer these solutions. And geographical origin, be it Europe or the US, and nowadays much more China, in the future even much more, that is of secondary concern, if it's at all of concern to them. And for European companies, that means they not only need to build top-notch solutions and features, they actually also need to build a seamless privacy experience. And there's a big question mark whether consent and choice is what customers expect. But what we also can see and learn is here that if we optimize for not having data, that's also actually against customer expectations, because customers are not so much concerned about sharing data. It's more about how companies use the data and how they use it to or put it to good use for customers. So let's pause here for a quick moment and quickly summarize what we might have learned until here. So number one, the solutions we are building today, they are not solving for customer problems. Choice and consent is overwhelming for customers. So for us, because we are all customers. And when we are struggling with such challenges, we tend to go where these challenges don't exist. And this is often beyond European shores. And this creates a risk for European innovation, also for European enterprises. Quite frankly, it actually creates a risk for Europe, maybe yet again becoming a bystander while others succeed, right? So maybe why should we act? Why I'm calling this out so specifically? I'm calling this out so specifically because of the very last point I just made, that maybe others again succeed where we as Europeans don't succeed. And I'm actually quite convinced of the European approach to privacy and its potential. And I'm actually convinced it not only has potential, but it's actually the better approach. But I believe that for me, working for a European company from the heart of Europe, and that was a deliberate choice, right? So it could have worked for other companies, but I wanted to build this from within. I believe that we have the means and the ways to actually achieve a balance between protecting fundamental rights, but at the same time unlocking the potential of data and innovation. But I think we are not quite there yet. I think the current path we have taken might more put us into a future where maybe Europe has again less or maybe even no impact or relevance. So this is what I'm really concerned about. And I think we should also not be distracted because we keep looking at these companies from outside of Europe, and we keep looking at them as a cause for what we're struggling with. But I think this is a homemade problem. This is a problem from within because we have clarity about all the things we don't want, but I think we lack clarity about the things we want, and we lack clarity about how to actually make our European approach successful, even though customers are actually clearly telling us, right? So this is something we need to solve from within, and this really lies with us. Looking at these other companies is a distraction. Maybe also quickly looking at the underlying issue. So I think there is an issue of privacy being very much belief-driven still. And I think this also holds true for me. People working with me now have very strong beliefs about privacy. So this is understandable. But I think this also means that we are distracted and we keep ignoring certain empirical evidence that is around us. And this, what I've shown you, just the brief elements of our customer research, they're just examples. There's much more. And I think there's also this element of this perceived exploitation of data during the past 2 decades that has created certain biases and that has cast the data use into a skeptical light, which is probably an understatement, right? And then there's also this notion of protecting fundamental rights, which is a very noble notion, actually very important. It's also a very powerful message that easily resonates with everyone. But again, I think this has made us ignore certain practical nuances of how we should implement the GDPR. And I think this has put us into a difficult position and a dangerous position because it seems it's a position situation where we have overconfidence, but also ignorance. And an author I quite like, he describes this as being on Mount Stupid. And if you need a mental image for that, this is like standing at the top, on the top of a mountain, and looking around, enjoying the view, not realizing that the actual mountain is right behind you. Just a second. But I think there's also hope, right? Because customers really tell us what they need, what they want. And we can listen to that. We can use this to recalibrate, and we can use this to ensure that we are not just building compliance solutions, but they actually go beyond that and build effective solutions, which means solutions that really solve for customer problems and do this in an effective way. So what can you maybe take away from this? Number one, awareness. How we are solving customer problems today, or believe we are solving customer problems today with privacy, is actually not solving. It's more putting problems in front of customers. Remember the apathic customers I described, how challenging that is if we put more choice information in front of them, because they need this to work differently. Empathy. Listen to customers, listen to us. we are raising our voice. And it's our obligation, responsibility to actually listen to that and build solutions that really work. And also urgency. This is not just about trust and privacy. This is not an academic discussion. This is actually about the success of Europe and our ability to actually support our citizens. I mean, our democracy is built on Europe being successful. And changing this might also need some more fundamental changes also in authority positions, as well as code positions. But it is important that we do so because failure is not an option. I just described to you before that if customers are not finding the solutions they seek for, they go elsewhere and maybe beyond European shores. And that could mean that maybe once again, our money and our data is with others outside of Europe. So it could actually mean that with the current path, we might again relive the past 20 years. And maybe that is then even worse. So in conclusion, what I would suggest is we are smarter this time around. I suggest we start with really listening to our customers and building solutions that really meet their needs. And I really suggest we move beyond Mount Stupid. Shall we? Thank you.
We shall, Jan. We shall.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you so much. It was it was refreshing to focus on real problems, kinda again, and yeah, thanks for your insight. I would love to include some questions, but we've run out of time already. I'm so sorry about that, but happy to discuss in another setting someday. For today, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.